What up, though? I'm Ray the Jones, Ray of Light, all that good stuff. What I want to talk to y'all about today is, well, the title of this one is going to be, You Is A Nigga, and why that's a good thing, and why you should celebrate the fact that you's a nigga. Now, what do I mean by that? First of all, I got to go all the way back to the trickster in African mythology and Native American mythology, and also just classic Americana. So you have the trickster mythology, or the trickster concept, which is really a trickster deity in African mythology, which a lot of times is represented as an animal, different animals, and they are basically teachers that teach certain lessons. That African mythology is also at the root of Native American mythology, with Uncle Remus and Burr Rabbit and those characters. That all comes from West African ancient mythology, which is also one and the same with American mythology, because, you know, the United States as we know it was connected directly with West Africa. So we share the same cultures and concepts. So the deities that we know as the trickster, they're also in ancient Kemet, they're in Celtic, they're in basically every culture of the world has the trickster concept, and this is basically a character that teaches a lesson by teaching the character in the story a tough lesson. Now, they might get hurt, they might catch hell for the lesson, but they still catch the lesson. That trickster is also shown in martial arts movies. It might be the master that is very wise, that might just hit the student in the eyes, and the student be like, ah, and the teacher be like, ha ha ha. You know, that's just the whole concept. And just looking at it from another level, we all have that inner trickster in us, and it's the ego. That's why our ego, as I always say, is our biggest teacher. The lessons we learn from our ego might be harsh, but they're still lessons. Some people go their whole life and not realize that their ego is their teacher. So the sooner you learn to master self will be when you learn that your ego is your teacher, and you can learn from your ego. Now, as you grow, the student becomes the master, and then you're able to master your ego, because your ego becomes the student. So when you learn from your ego and you master your ego, you become the master of self. When you do that, you actually become a nigga, or a nigga. Now, the reason why I say that you are a nigga is because when you look at the concept of the creation story in Genesis, you have the serpent that basically tempted Adam and Eve, or so-called seduced Adam and Eve. But in actuality, the serpent was a good guy in the creation story, because the serpent informed Adam and Eve that they were gods, which in actuality is the whole concept of every religion. If you dig to the heart of it, the concept is that you are one with the Creator. You are God. So anything short of that is actually trying to put you in a box. So when you have the creation story of Genesis, let me back up. Before we even talk about that, we have to talk about where the creation story of Genesis comes from. And it actually comes from the Sumerian text. So in the Sumerian creation story, it speaks of how lower deities created humanity so they can work the fields and mine gold for those lower deities. So the trickster, who is the divine feminine, knew that these lower beings were creating man. So she tricked them and snuck in the divine spark in humanity. So when we continue that story in the Judeo-Christian version of the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, we see that the serpent is the one telling them that they are gods. Now, you have a caduceus symbol. The caduceus symbol is basically those two serpents that go up like that, and they have wings and they're on a staff. That's the caduceus symbol. That symbol is on every medical institution, every hospital, because it's basically the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life combined make up the caduceus symbol, because it is two serpents. So one serpent represents Set. It represents the lower self. But in that lower self, you have to have knowledge of good and evil. That's one tree. Then there's another tree, the tree of life. So who is the tree of life represented by? It's represented by none other than the Christ in the New Testament. So, in other words, those two serpents, one is Set, or the serpent in the Garden of Eden that told Adam and Eve that they were gods. And it was proven by the lower deity that created Adam and Eve when, after he punished Adam and Eve and the serpent, he said, they have become like one of us, they have become as us, knowing both good and evil. If they eat the tree of life, they shall have eternal life and live forever. And I'm paraphrasing. So the lower God of the Old Testament, who we think is the Most High God, isn't the Most High God. It is a lower being that sole purpose was to pimp humanity to be slaves. So the serpent was the good God, and the God in the Old Testament was actually the bad guy that wanted to keep us enslaved. So you got Jesus in the New Testament that says, when he was about to be stoned by the Sadducees, isn't it written in your law that ye are God? So when he talks about the law, he was speaking of the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Because when you break down the Old Testament, it is the first 5 books that are the law books. So, only place in those law books that says that is in Genesis, when the serpent said, ye are gods. So, Christ and the serpent are really one and the same. So that's the serpentine energy that both of us, or both serpents have. One is the yin, one is the yang, one is the higher, one is the lower, but they're one and the same. That's why they both are called the morning star. So I say all that to say that when you look at the word nigga, it actually stems from a word that predates white people or the European. It is the term nagas or nagas. Nagas means serpent god, serpent deity. So both Jesus serpent, they're neighbors. They represent the fallen ones that are higher beings that meddle in the affairs of man, that come down to keep humanity going in a certain direction. So every now and then, in every age, you have a group of people, of beings that assist humanity on their path for evolution. So that's why when you look at it, you can also say that the Moors are the Negas, because what did they do? They civilized Europe, and through them, humanity evolved. Because when you look behind the scenes of all the Freemasonry, all the founders of the Constitution, they had Moors behind them whispering in their ear. When you look at old paintings, when you look in the Renaissance, you always see a black person behind the scenes, lurking behind the white oligarchy, whispering to them, giving them the higher knowledge. So those are the Negas. Negus, Negus, is also a term in Ethiopian. In Ethiopia, it's a title which represents nobility and actually means sovereign king. So when you're calling yourself a nigga, subconsciously you're saying the vibration of sovereign king and the serpent, or wise deity, or wise god. That is the vibration of that word. That's why that word hasn't gone anywhere. So when you think about niggas, the ones that are classified as niggas, it is because of that nigger power that they haven't been able to take over our race. The only reason they haven't gentrified the neighborhoods is because of fear of crime. Why are we getting shot down and shot down like dogs in the street? It's because of that nigger energy. So I say all that to say, embrace your niggerness, but not only be a nigga, be a nigga. So tap into your higher self and be that serpent, higher race of beings that we are here, and we waking up, and that divine spark is being awakened in all of us. So that's my little 2 cents. Please leave your comments. Thank you. Peace.